Hi, welcome to today's Cherry Bekaert's GovCon podcast, where we discuss current government contracting trends, compliance matters, and best practices to guide federal contractors forward. I'm Susan Moser. I'm the industry leader for the government contracts practice, and joining me today is Brendan Halloran, who is a senior manager in our practice and a former ACO with DCMA. A lot of you have listened to Brendan before on other podcasts. Today, we're going to be taking a look at what we learned from a recent Inspector General's report on the 8A program. So, as many of you know, we have a series on the 8A program, different aspects, and we thought this would be interesting to talk a little bit about what we found in the Inspector General's report. Why do we care? The reason we care is that often IG reports foreshadow what we can see going forward, particularly with the SBA. So we thought it'd be interesting to share a little bit about what we learned. So first, I'm going to ask Brendan to just give a little background on the 8A program and share some data points, and then we'll jump into what we learned in the IG report. So, Brendan, go ahead and give us a little background on the 8A program.
Sure. No, thanks, Susan. So, as you mentioned, obviously, kind of the focus of today is around the IG report. And, just to start things off, the, IG in this case was really just focusing on determining, what is the extent that SBA is measuring and monitoring the 8A companies that participate in the plan, in actually accomplishing and achieving their business development goals. So they really looked at a, pretty wide range in terms of the 40 firms that they looked at across 5 district offices and going back to 2011 all the way up through 2020. So obviously, to determine what the, viability of the plan is and the program, that's really the focus of what the IG was looking at. And so just a little bit in terms of background on it, the mission, of the 8A program, obviously is to, provide those opportunities for, small or disadvantaged firms to actually participate and grow through government contract awards. So it dates back, many years, and so has gone through, various iterations. But the, anything from, contracting opportunities that would be, set asides, limitations on competition for 8A firms, and sole source are all, viable avenues for small companies to get their start in government contracts. And so obviously the SBA's mission is to, provide those opportunities, administer the program, and, ensure that, that the companies are actually progressing kind of through the stages of it. So, as a small company, really relying on the, on the 8A program is critical, for, eventually, kind of working your way through and graduating. And, we've certainly witnessed, many of our clients and companies in industry, that have really worked this very successfully, and, getting their, first contract award, partnering with other companies through various programs, and, finally graduating. So it's certainly, a viable program for some of those opportunities. And it's critical for, SBA to actually, see what the success, of some of these, vehicles are. So some of the roles and responsibilities, obviously, the SBA, having the, really the certification, administering the standards for that, also need to be looking at, what the, kind of what the progression is. So, the mission, obviously, as we stated, is really giving, giving companies the tools and, some of the know-how and, access to participate, and, I think it was, going back to, I think 1988 in terms of the, Business Opportunity Development Reform Act, was really, helping those companies to, one, to have, consistent and ongoing reviews of what what the companies and their participants, what their business plans are, what are their business goals. So that's really one of the key metrics that SBA is tracking, and they need to be doing that really throughout their kind of maturation through the process, and kind of meeting the steps. And so, the kind of the middle ground of that is, or midpoint is to be, kind of gradually decreasing, their dependence, on specific 8A contract awards, and ultimately, is to see them actually graduate from the program, once they've, hit those business goals. So those are the things that, that the SBA really needs to demonstrate that they're doing, throughout the program, to really, reinforce, whether there's, things are, working as they should, or if there's, a need for, additional oversight, additional support measures. So those are all the things that, we're going to get to that the IG looked at, but are, a critical part of their role, in the whole program.
Cover a couple of data points that were in the IG's report. So the contracting opportunities include set-aside contracts, which limit competition to 8A firms. As of August 19, 2021, the SBA reported 4,906 firms participated in the 8A program. In fiscal FY20, the federal government awarded nearly $34 billion in contracts to 8A firms, including $11 billion in sole source awards. In recent years, SBA spent an average of $62 million on the program administration. SBA's FY22 budget requested additional staff to meet the president's goal of increasing the share of federal contracts awarded to small disadvantaged businesses from 5 to 15% by 2025. So, as we've talked about before, this is a goal of the administration, and so the SBA has put in place a number of steps to make the program easier for companies to get in, but the oversight is really the primary area of this IG's report. So what was in the report? So the IG reviewed assistance that the SBA provided to 8A program participants from 2011 to 2020, which included reviewing the files for 40 of the firms assigned to the program in 5 district offices. They also reviewed applicable laws, regulations, policies, procedures, and interviewed program officials. So what did they find? So at a high level, the IG found that the SBA business development process did not consistently allow for SBA or its stakeholders to determine whether the firm met their individual goals to successfully complete the program. There wasn't a mechanism in place to ensure that the SBA consistently reviewed plans and goals and then objectively monitored business development process. So consequently, they found that 15 of the 40 firms tested did not have approved business plans, making these firms actually ineligible to receive $93 million of awards that they did. They also found that SBA did not consistently document that its staff assessed the needs, counseled, or conducted field visits with the 8A firms to ensure that they received the assistance needed to be prepared to compete for contracts. One of the other objectives was to identify if the SBA program officials offered program flexibilities to all 8A participants during the pandemic, adapting business development assistance to help most firms stay in business and remain. An obvious outcome during the pandemic, as a lot of people know, is that the SBA did extend, each program participant was extended an additional year in the program. And so I think certainly that's good evidence of one way that they did that. The OIG made 8 recommendations for the agency to better measure, monitor, and deliver training. overall, the SBA fully agreed with 5 recommendations. They partially agreed with 2 recommendations, and they disagreed with one of the recommendations. The SBA also did put together a number of steps on things that they will do to address that. So the first finding, which I think is really the most notable, and I think the one that we will see the most action come out of, is the finding number 1 was SBA must improve processes for monitoring 8A participant goal achievements and for measuring program impact. So the SBA found that they did not establish standardized procedures for business opportunity specialists to use to monitor program participants. Standardized procedures would provide the framework to ensure specialists consistently reviewed business plans with each firm and documented approvals, that there was documentation for each firm's progress in meeting goals and determining graduation, and that there was follow through. And I know, certainly for us, we deal with 8A firms all over the country, and we certainly see some inconsistencies from one SBA office to another in terms of how they do that. One of the things that we wanted to point this out is, business plans are due. You submit them every year. You do an annual update. 31 of the 40 participants reviewed, or 78%, did not have sufficient support to show that the specialists had provided regular or meaningful feedback during the annual review process. And again, I know what we see is, it's a lot of times it's a check the box, you just submit it and then you never hear from them. So I think one of the reasons we wanted to highlight this is we think we would expect that we will see more involvement from SBA business opportunity specialists going forward in terms of looking at the business plan, meeting with companies, and really talking through. As Brendan mentioned, the SBA really has a goal to evaluate, how people are meeting those goals. Are they, not just graduating in 9 years, but are they actually meeting the objective? Meaning, are they able to be successful, after the 8A program? One of the so I'm sorry, Brendan.
No, I was just going to say, Susan, I mean, you bring up a good point in terms of, is it really, or has it been, historically kind of a check the box? And, we talk with clients, frequently, and, and I think it does vary quite a bit. And in many cases, we have gotten that feedback where, it's like, well, we've done this step and, it's kind of, put it on autopilot, and they haven't really heard much, beyond that. And, I think that certainly, with the visibility, of the finding, that may be a good, point for participants to, ensure that, if they haven't been asked about some of these records or, plans and goals, to, certainly be updating those, anticipating that there probably will be increased oversight.
Yep. There was data that showed that 550 firms completed the 8A program in 2019 and 457 in 2020, but they didn't have any data to confirm whether any of those firms had actually met the statutory definition for graduating, which is, being able to compete, not just complete the 9-year track, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
In the, one of the other things is there was a good bit of data on the performance across different SBA offices, and no surprise, the Washington area are, some of the largest, busiest, and the number of business opportunity specialists for each site is pretty astounding. And if we have time, I'll share some of that data. One of the things that I thought was interesting is in the report, the SBA in FY20 reported that 11,150 small businesses were assisted by the 8A program. However, 7,669 of those small businesses included in that number had simply submitted an application to the 8A program, of which the SBA only approved 591, which again, I think that in and of itself is interesting data, and I think sort of highlights some of the challenges that, you know, the administration wants the SBA program, 8A program to expand, but the percentage of companies applying versus getting approved really remains quite small. And, you know, how SBA has been managing and tracking some of that data, I think this report highlights, leaves some things to be improved upon. So there's definitely a number of recommendations about data collection. The finding number 2 was the SBA should improve its business development efforts to help firms succeed. So again, the Small Business Act requires small business opportunity specialists to annually review current business plans with program participants, paying attention to correcting any conditions likely to prevent the firm from receiving contracts. And basically, the OIG found that the firms did not consistently document when they counseled or made field visits. And field visits are supposed to be a key activity. And I know from, you know, lots of our clients, very few of them have had field visits, which maybe that's not a bad thing, but that's definitely you know, an area that I think we would expect to see some changes, you know, going forward. One of the other areas, finding number 3, was about the SBA offering program flexibilities to assist small businesses during the pandemic. And I would say by and large, the IG did get good marks for that. Obviously, the first item being getting the extra program year, certainly very, very helpful as part of the CARES Act. The also did report that the majority of 8A firms did receive COVID-19 relief. In fact, the SBA loan data showed that 3,500 8A firms received PPP assistance, with 45% of those firms receiving a second loan. So I think, you know, there were a number of areas, and I think, you know, we've all experienced, the SBA probably had their most challenging couple of years, just with all that was put on the SBA to managing all of the different programs during the pandemic. So, you know, it's probably not surprising that a lot of progress maybe wasn't made in some of these other areas.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see, you know, with, you know, as we're making our way out of COVID and things are opening up, and there should be, you know, obviously more interaction and more ability for, you know, for those specialists to actually get out and, you know, conduct interviews and do check-ins. You know, it'll be interesting to see, you know, how quickly they are to start, you know, either, you know, ramping those efforts up, or, you know, kind of coming up with alternate, you know, ways of accomplishing that. You know, and they may also, you know, have to look at, you know, are there additional, you know, metrics that they need to report, or different ways to capture some of that, you know, in response to this. So, you know, it's certainly, I think, business and you know, how they conduct things, you know, with the government has changed quite a bit, you know, across the board in terms of anything from audit to, you know, SBA activities. And so there may be some, you know, maybe some changes to accomplish some of these things coming in the near future.
Yeah, and I think you know, one of the last comments is they did list the number of 8A district offices relative to the number of business opportunity specialists that were assigned, and how many cases that is per business opportunity. So, you know, I think I don't want to be too critical of the SBA, because I think there's certainly a desire on the folks at the SBA to really try to be helpful to 8A firms. But there is also just the math on this. I mean, just as an example, in the Washington metro area, there are 990 8A firms assigned to 14 business opportunity specialists, which is 71 businesses per specialist. Well, it's very difficult for them to do more than a cursory, review. Hopefully maybe they'll get some additional funding because we do hope, and we are seeing signs of new opportunities for more and more 8A firms. But we thought this would be interesting just to share this information, just to give 8A companies just a little bit of a preview of what you might expect in this coming year. So again, I think the wrap up, the takeaway is we would expect that there will be a little bit more rigor in the review of your annual update. There will be probably an attempt to do more site visits, and that's not a bad thing. And a little bit more emphasis on not just that you've finished the program in 9 years, but have you met the program objective, meaning being ultimately able to compete. And I think with that, we will call it a day. We are going to have probably our next podcast on the 8A program. We will talk about what happens after graduation and being prepared to be successful outside of the 8A program. So I hope you all will join us for that. And you can certainly look for information on our website, www.cbh.com, for more information on other podcasts, and you can subscribe, and hope you enjoyed today's broadcast. Thank you.